Well, we came into the store real quick since we found out some exciting news. So we're gonna get this embroidered and have something special to tell our family. Hey guys, you know what? We wanted to tell you something because we found something out today. There's gonna be another car seat back here.
We just found out yesterday and we confirmed it today.
Huh?
What are you gonna do to be over there?
I know. Well, we took a test yesterday and then I took a second one today just to make sure. But yeah, they both were positive. Well, we're gonna tell everyone, since we're gonna see everyone, we're gonna tell everyone. I can't see nothing.
Oh, looking at her!
You want to show Auntie what we bought at Disneyland? Turn it around, turn it around, turn it around.
You're gonna give me a big brother?
Show it to them, turn it around, show it to them.
The other way. Nice job. Here, hold on.
You had one job. Wait.
Awesome. Congratulations. Thank you. It's got me teary-eyed.
Pregnancy announcement. I knew it! I knew it! Oh my God, congratulations! I knew it! I was like, right away, I went like this to the thing. I'm going here. Congratulations! Oh, we knew it! Oh my God! Congratulations! Yeah, I do have sparkling.
We're gonna cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cheers.
And also that you guys are gonna be Auntie and Uncles again.
Oh, no.
Congratulations! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
2 days ago.
I We gotta get it out now. We gotta get it out. You're gonna be a good partner.
So greetings, everyone. This is a little different from what we normally post, and it's definitely a little difficult to talk about. But I just feel like it's something that we need to share because it's kind of our way of
healing through it and
yeah.
sharing, our story of what happened, and just always remembering, the love that we had for this child, and hopefully us sharing will help somebody else.
And definitely help us as well.
But as you saw, we found out that we were pregnant in October, and we were really excited about it. We were actually in LA when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, 90% of our family was there, so we told everybody then. When we came back to Nashville, I scheduled my appointment. We weren't able to get in until Thanksgiving week, actually, which would have been 10 weeks with the baby.
Mm-hmm.
When we had the appointment, everything was fine. The doctor noticed that the baby was measuring a little bit smaller. It was the beginning of our 10 weeks, but she did highlight that the baby was like 8 or 9 weeks in size, but there was no concern at that point because they just thought maybe we, miscalculated our days or something was off with our days, but there was no concern, so, we thought everything was good to go. So we had Thanksgiving together. So early December, like the second week, I noticed that I was spotty, and I read about implantation bleeding and didn't really get concerned at that point. Robert was actually planning to head out that weekend to Las Vegas with his friends, so we were busy just trying to get things together at home and get him prepared for that trip. It was probably a Tuesday or Wednesday that I had started bleeding. He flew out on Thursday. By Friday, I was still bleeding. And so I went to the ER. And while I was at the ER, they did an ultrasound and they found that the baby didn't have a pulse and that we had lost the baby. So I had to call you in Vegas, and because you had just landed like a few hours ago or something, or the day before, I had to call you and explain it to you over the phone what happened, and the doctor basically said that I could do a DNC and everything will be done pretty much within the hour or so, and I'll have a little bit of a recovery, or I could let it happen naturally, which means I go home and it just happens naturally. I think I was in too much of a shock to make a decision, and he wasn't here yet, so we decided that I would come home. So I came back home, and you flew back and got back that night.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, that night.
So after Robert came back, the doctor prescribed some medication that helped the process along. I don't remember right now what it was called, but it was just 2 pills that you have to take that just just helps the tissues come out. And the baby was so small. They were only measuring 8 weeks, which really wasn't formed into much at that point, so it was mostly just tissue at that point. So I had to kind of wait for the tissue to be released and to come out. And yeah,
It was a long process too.
it was a long process. After you had gotten back, you weren't feeling too well, and he actually ended up having COVID, right?
Mhm.
So he was quarantined in one of the rooms in our home. So I was, here with our son and with my parents that were helping us out the whole time because he had to be quarantined. But the process took a couple days, and I think that was Friday, so it wasn't until Monday that I think the majority of the tissue actually came out, and what I considered to be the birth of our child. I had to go back to the doctor's office for them to do another ultrasound, and just to make sure, and they kept noticing that there was still tissue there that wasn't being released, and they encouraged to just wait and let it happen naturally, and it was probably 4 weeks that we had to wait.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a long process. Yes, I could have probably done the DNC, but at that point, the doctor felt like it might have been better just to happen naturally, and most of it was already gone. But like I said, the baby was so small that it was just all tissue, and I couldn't even tell when most of it actually came out, which was even harder because it's just scary every time you go to the bathroom and you're not sure what it is or if that's your child or not. So that was hard. But yeah, it took a couple weeks for probably about 3 ultrasounds or so for them to finally confirm that everything was gone. And that alone was triggering every time you have to do an ultrasound. So that was really hard.
It's been a difficult process, and
Yeah.
you went through most of it, and it hurts, we're actually at our due date right now. In fact, it would have been, I think, 2 days ago?
Yeah, so we did have a due date in July, and we waited before we wanted to, share our story because I don't know if we were ready, and it's still very hard. But we're trying to think about celebrating basically whatever, the love that we had for this child. And I think that's the best way that we're walking through this hard time. I think nothing's gonna make it easier, and we have our son who's really smart and understands that there was a baby there, and we had to explain that to him, and that was probably one of the hardest things that we had to do is explain that. And how do you explain that to a 4-year-old? And he still asks months later about the baby, and I think that's been hard, but we're trying to we bring it up in in a positive way of, you know, that we still love this
That's
child.
right. And they live in our hearts and in our memories, and they always will. You know, we remember them. It's a difficult place of memory, but we still hold
We
them in our hearts.
and we say them too because we, at our doctor's appointment that we did
We
have,
found
we
out.
did do the gender test, and they it came back inconclusive, so we actually never found out the gender.
In remembrance, we named baby Riley. It could be a boy or a girl, but baby Riley will be with us in our hearts. And we have a little angel looking down on us. It's tough. We don't really understand why these things happen sometimes. We just have to, deal with it and embrace the ones that we love and appreciate what we have. As much as we've heard that, it's just not that simple sometimes.
And I think what was hard was the week or the weeks after it happened, and we shared with family and friends that we were going through this. We heard a lot of times like, oh, I've had this friend go through this, or my sister went through that and lost their child, and it was hard, and I'll be completely honest, it was completely hard for me to hear anyone else's story at that time. I didn't want to hear anyone else's story. I felt like it took away from my own. But after time went on, it kind of helped to hear those stories, and I think I was a little surprised at how common it is, and even the ER doctor, we kept saying, my ER doctor had actually gone through a miscarriage. And she even said, like, 1 in 3 pregnancies end in loss. And at the time I wasn't hearing it, and after a while it kind of brought some comfort in some way to know that it wasn't anything that we did. That's the hardest part, is you go back and you think of every single thing you did during that time frame, and it's not anything that we did, and that's
the hardest
the
thing
biggest
to
thing
let go of, is like not to blame ourselves,
Yeah.
because I was we were putting a lot of stress on all that. I felt guilty for not being here when it happened. I felt like it was all my fault. So it's really difficult. The hardest part of it, I guess, was just trying to let go of it and putting a reason to it, or trying to find a reason to it. There isn't one. And so you're left with this time that you were pregnant for a little bit, but it's a very special time. It's a very small amount of time, and we didn't really go through the motions that we went through it. So it's difficult for me to put like an actual memory to the baby, because I never actually got to meet the baby or see the baby. I only saw one ultrasound, and it wasn't even like a clear one, it was a very early one.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, you had to actually go through the process of having to go through all of this, and I know it's been very difficult.
And just learning, how we both grieve differently, and that's okay, and you have a different experience than I have, and that's okay too. But what I'm learning is that it's always gonna be something that I'm gonna think about, and some days are better than others, and some things so small could trigger me, and just learning to get through each day has been a big learning curve for me. But we share the story again so we could have something
In remembrance.
in remembrance of the baby, and You know, I want to remember all the love and, you know, everybody was celebrating us having another child, and I want to remember that. But, you know, we're putting this out there, and again, like you said, it's not like our normal content, but we're putting it out there because, you know, it's helped me to listen to some other people's stories and hear what they've gone through, and in some ways I hope it just helps one person to also hear that, you know, our story about it. And what people post online or on social media is always just like the fun stuff, and, you know, life happens in between that. And yeah, so we just wanted to share our little story.